everybody. In this video, I'm going to show you how I make my planet space beads. I have a previous video where I made some stringers and prep work for this bead. So if you haven't seen it, you could go check that out. That's a pretty quick video. And anyways, let's go on to making the bead. So the first thing I'm showing you here are the little prepped stringers that I made in the previous video, plus I have regular transparent black there and some just solid yellow color that I'll use for a planet also, and I think I'm going to use red too. And then also I have a full 8mm rod of clear, and then the skinny rod I pulled out previously. Another thing I'll be using in this video is silver foil. This is the foil that you can actually touch and grab and it won't go flying all over like the silver leaf does. This is actually foil, so it's a little bit thicker and it's manageable. You can hold it with your hands. And so basically you're going to make your foil as wide as you're going to make your bead. And I have some extra pieces of foil I'm just breaking up because there always seems to be one area of the bead that doesn't get totally covered in the silver foil. And this is pure 99.99 silver. So you just have to make sure it's the pure silver foil or leaf. I believe I got mine from Arrow Springs, if they still sell it. You could check them out. And so basically I'm just preheating my mandrel and I'm going to make a fairly fat barrel of just transparent regular black. This is a Fetre black. You can also use Tuxedo from CIM, I believe, is their transparent black, so it's whatever black you use. Standard black. And I'm going to make my bead as long as I want it, and it's basically also the same width of the foil that's below sitting there. And I just sped this part up. I'm just building up the glass. I'm going to make a fairly fat barrel. It's about half the size of the finished bead when it's done. The bead will be almost fully round when it's finished. And this is about half its size. So I'm just building up those ends a little bit, and then I'll add some more in the middle and just bulking it up. And so when you're happy with how much glass you have and you think you're about half the width that you want your finished bead to be, which basically these beads are fairly round, you could just melt all that in and then you could start shaping. And I just shape it out into a nice tapered barrel so that it has the foundation to be round at the end after all the clear and the planets are added. It'll round out more naturally since it's already starting to be tapered at the edges. And then once I have my shape pretty much set, it doesn't have to be totally perfect, I'm going to prep my foil. I just put it on my little marver there. Heat up my black glass, nice and glowy. Make sure you get all the way to the ends, and then just roll up the foil. And before you put it back in the flame, you have to make sure you burnish in this foil or rub it in, because if there are areas of silver that are not actually attached to your bead, they're not pressed against your bead, they're just going to burn off and fly off. And also you want to make sure you have really good ventilation when you're working with metals. So just an FYI on that. And as you see, there was that one little section that it didn't go all the way around, and so that's one of the reasons why I always have some little extra pieces of foil there. So I could just attach it, and I'm just going to burnish it in with my tweezers right there. Rub it in, I think I'm going to put another one down, but I don't think I really need it. And so basically, after all the foil is on and rubbed in, I'm going to melt it into the black. Get it really nice and hot. And all this foil will melt in, adhere to it, and kind of spread out and make little pinpoints of little tiny bits of silver that look like little stars. It's really cool. And you can kind of see it. It's a little bit blurry. And I'm trying to blow on it there. But you can kind of see the silver in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up my propane, and I'm going to reduce this and make it all shiny. I'm going to get it really shiny from each end of the mandrel throughout the whole bead and get it very silver sheen to it. So it gets all really shiny. And then I'm going to encase this. So I'm putting my flame back to normal, and I don't want to put my bead back in the flame, or else it'll lose that shine. So I'm going to hurry up and start heating up my clear, and I'm going to start encasing this. And I also have this part sped up. So I'm just going to encase it with just a thin layer. It doesn't have to be very thick, but you want to protect that silver. And you can see how shiny it is now. It's been sitting a few minutes getting cool, and it gets even shinier when you encase it. But the shine will kind of go away when you heat it again, but then it'll make a really cool effect and turn the black. Some areas of the black will turn bluish, like a dark denim color, and you'll get a lot more of the like speckled star effect on your bead with this technique. And so now I'm just pushing down the clear to go all the way around the holes of the bead on either side and trying to cover every last bit of black that I can to make sure it's totally encased. And make sure you put your tool in water if it gets too hot. I'm just pushing that way down as close as I can to the mandrel without touching it. And so now I'm going to superheat this clear and reshape the bead back into my little fat barrel shape. And then the shiny will start going away. See, it's starting to look a little whitish in areas, as you can see there as I'm rolling. But that'll even start going away a little bit too, the more you heat it. And they'll start fading like into a dark sky blue color. So it looks really neat. And as you can see, my bead's getting a little fatter. We still haven't added the planets yet. But let's see if I can get a good shot of this with the reduced. So see how you can see it's getting a little bluish there instead of just black? And you got a lot more variance in the way the starry night sky looks, which is a really cool effect. So now we're going to add the planets. And I don't have to worry now because my background sky is protected with that layer of clear, so it doesn't matter how much I heat this. It'll still be there. So that's one of the reasons why you encase it with clear first. So I'm putting on the yellow and the coral orange. I'm going to just twist that on and then give it a little swirly as I break it off there. And for every planet I put down, I pretty much melt it in like halfway. So it's like a half circle sitting on the surface of the bead. But you don't want it undercutting. You don't want the circle to go back around and dip in before the surface of your bead. You want it flush, at least 90 degrees. And so here's the next one, which broke, which is going to be the Earth type planet. And I want this one a little wider, so I'm going to flatten it out. This is going to be a bigger planet, so I'm going to flatten it out a little bit with my tool just to widen the base there of where it's touching the bead. So it'll be a slightly bigger planet. And I'm going to add a little bit of white to this later for some clouds. So there will be a little more bulk to it. But that one's also melted in about halfway. And so I have 2 planets with the twisties that I made. But it just seems a little empty, so I'm just going to add a few more planets. And this is just an example bead, of course, but I'm going to add a few more planets of just some solid colors. So this one's just a yellow planet. And then I'm going to add a blue planet. And I focus on each planet's dot, you know, one at a time, and make sure they're melted in enough before I go on to the next one, just so that they're all set and ready to go for encasing. So there's the little blue one, and then I think I'm going to make one more planet, which I'm going to make red, and I'm going to put little dots of orange on it, and we'll see how that comes out when it comes out of the kiln. So here's the red one I'm going to put on here. And I had a little stringer of orange, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to just put a few dots around the orange and try to give it some variance when it's done. So this is another way you can make planets. You can just dot them with different colors, or dot and then swirl the color after you dot it. So you don't actually have to make twisties or just solid colors. You can make them however you want. And so now I'm going to put little tiny dots of white on top of part of my Earth type planet. And I'm really sorry here, but my head starts getting in the way. I'm nearsighted, so it's really hard for me to see these little tiny dots, and so I got totally in the way of the camera. And then, so I'm taking these and I'm just trying to grab some of the dots and kind of swirling them a little bit so they're not just looking like total dots, that they actually look a little swirled and melded together a little bit. But it's however you want to put it on. I could have just left it the way it was, being blue and green. Didn't have to put the white on. But this is also going to bulk up this planet a little bit more also. And if you notice, if it goes out of round a little bit, you can kind of push it back to round very gently. Push it back to round. And there's all my little planets. And they're all sticking up about halfway, so they're like half circles on the surface of my bead. And now this is where my skinny stringer comes in. And what I want to do, and my hand's in the way at first, but it'll get out of the way in the next minute. There we go. But what I'm doing is I'm putting dots between the surface of the bead and the planet. And so what I'm trying to do is bring the surface up to the same height as the planets. And that's the whole point of this skinny rod, is building up the base of clear to bring it up to the height of the planet without distorting the planet. That's the one thing. You've got to make sure your planets are cool, that they're not warm, or else you're going to distort them. And I sped up this video, as you can see, but hopefully you can, my head gets in the way a little bit again. And I think I just noticed right there that my head was in the way, so I'm going to try to stay out of the way. But so basically, you got to make sure that your planets are cool enough. And then another reason why I'm using a skinny stringer is because the heat there's not enough heat to transfer into the planet to distort it. If I was using a big fat rod of clear instead of this skinny rod, there would be a lot more heat in there, and that heat could transfer into your planet's dot and actually distort it, and you don't want that. So I have basically all my planets encased. I went around every single planet and then over the top of the planet. So they're all encased separately. And now I can go in between the lower areas of the bead and build up those sections. So basically I'm just going around and I'm filling in all the other empty sections that don't have planets and building up that clear all the way around. And you want to try to get it as evenly round as possible. And if you've been working with glass for any amount of time, you'll know that whenever you heat glass, it wants to form a ball. And so basically you want the glass you're building up here to already pretty much be a ball form so that you don't distort these planets. So if you have a big divot, like if there was one section you didn't fill in with clear, your planets are going to try to melt down into that divot because your whole bead is going to try to turn round, and so it's going to try to pull that glass into the divot or dimple to try to make it round. And so you want to keep that from happening by making it round in the first place. So basically is what you're trying to do is get the whole surface evenly round. And so you can look at it from all angles and see if one section looks a little flatter, not as high as another section, and try to get it all rounded out. So I filled in all the gaps and went around and tried to get it round. And I'm going to melt this down a little bit, try to start melting those humps in. And if I see a particular area as I'm working, because sometimes it's really hard to work with clear to be able to see it well, but if after it's melting, if I see an area where it's like, oh, there's a little dimple there, or there's a divot, I need more glass, I'm going to add it like I'm adding right here. Because if you don't add it, your bead will continue to melt, and it can pull those planets and make them oblong, make them crooked, and the whole point of this is trying to keep your planets round and three-dimensional. That's the whole point of this bead. And so I'm trying to fill in any little divots or dimples and trying to make it more evenly round. And then I heat some more. So if you notice any odd shape, divots, dimples, low spots, stop and add them, and then continue melting again. And you can keep all your planets nice and round. And so that's all I'm doing here. And so that's probably the toughest part, is being able to get all your clear at the same height after encasing all those planets. But once they're encased and you got a fairly round bead, you can finish shaping it up without too much distortion. And so I had a little marble mold. It was like too small. I couldn't find my other one, so I'm just using this one that's slightly smaller, and it's just helping me round it out a little bit. But you really don't have to use one of those. And as you can see, the rest of my shaping I'm just going to do on my marver. And then also, which is hard to see here, but I'm using my paddles and I'm looking straight at it to see if it's nice and round, and I'm just barely tapping it. Tap, 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 trying to get it to be evenly round and not lumpy or having one side fatter than another side. And so that's all I was doing there. But basically just finish rounding it out and getting the edges even, which is what I'm doing there. That was my phone, sorry. And there is the final space bead with some 3-dimensional planets in it and the really cool looking space background. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.